As anyone who listens to the multiple podcasts and internet shows I'm a part of, they will know that Joel loves himself some Orange is the New Black. 11 months ago, I gorged myself on the first 2 seasons, and now 13 more episodes have been brought to us courtesy of Netflix. In fact, they released Season 3 earlier than expected because, hey, why not? They're Netflix and they can do whatever the hell they want, right? As we dig on in, the ladies of Litchfield are dealing with the fallout and repercussions of V's death and the Big Escape. It's because of that Morello is off truck duty and Pennsatucky is in. In fact, much of this season focuses on Doggett. Once something akin to a villain, the show goes out of its way to offer her more depth and sympathy. In fact, she may have more flashbacks now than anyone else. I personally liked her newfound friendship with Big Boo. It makes sense. Both were kicked out of their respective groups, and in a weird way they kind of complement one another. Boo never let anyone define her, while Doggett was constantly getting put into boxes by others. Doggett conquering her homophobia being just one of the many big steps forward that helps soften her character. And while we're on the subject, Boo finally got an origin story this season, but it's totally unlike anything I thought it would be. In fact, the show, in a rare meta moment, actually lampshades this fact by Boo going, "Oh, I'm sorry, is this not the sob story you were expecting?" In a way, yeah, it wasn't. We also find out that Litchfield is in dire financial straits after the exodus of corrupt Figueroa last season, which means to save the prison, Joe Caputo will be forced to make a deal with the devil, selling it to a major prison corporation just to keep the doors open and the guards working. Caputo was also one of the more upstanding staff members, and he really gets put through the ringer here this time around. For the first time ever, we even get flashbacks to staff members, wherein we see this guy was basically punished his whole life for doing what most would consider the right thing. The Evil Corporation, for all intents and purposes, is our villain this season, personified by Mike Birbigula's exasperated suit who wants Caputo's approval, but also for his father who runs the company to think he's doing a good job, implementing a cost-cutting, corner-cutting system that puts the whole prison in danger. One of the first things to go to hell is the food, which gives Red something to rail against this season, and also gives her an extra in to make use of all the produce she's got from the garden they set up last season. You know what, I'm only 2 minutes in and it just hits me that I'm still only scratching the surface of what actually happens in Season 3 of Orange is the New Black. This may very well be one of the most packed seasons in terms of stories and mini-stories. Taken together, there might actually be more going on here than the first 2 seasons combined, so it's very easy to lose track of certain characters in the shuffle. Even Chapman herself kind of takes a step back and just becomes one of the other faces in the prison. Her big arc for this season involves running an internet dirty panty business in an attempt to get some money for herself upon release, but which also turns her into something of a power-mad tyrant along the way, and that's after she comes face-to-face with Voss again, who got thrown back in jail on a gun charge because of Chapman herself. So yeah, needless to say, a lot happens in this season. Season 3 also brought with it some new characters. I was most excited for Laura Petty, who made a brief cameo in Season 2 but looks to be a full-time inmate now. Sadly, we don't get very much time with her character, mainly because it's all part of a bigger mystery plot wherein Voss thinks the cartel has sent someone inside the prison to assassinate her, and you know what, it only gets more complicated after that, if you can believe it. There's also a new, better counselor who threatens Healy's authority by offering much better psychological care than he does, as well as offering a drama club that allows the inmates to get out their creative impulses. And of course, how could I forget Stella, played by Ruby Rose, who serves as a romantic rival to Voss, and to better help illustrate how bad Chapman is at choosing partners and sabotaging her own life in search of adventure. And you know what, speaking of Piper's partners, Larry and Penny don't actually show up in this season at all, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a good thing. Their story was done. It was over with. It was getting really grating near the end of Season 2, how we kept getting plucked out of the prison to see what they were doing. In fact, there are precious few moments in Orange is the New Black Season 3 when we leave the prison at all. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of mini-stories going on this season that take pretty much the entire 13-episode run to resolve themselves, like Tasty taking up more of a leadership role for her own group, a Norma-worshipping cult that springs up, or even Crazy Eyes writing a dirty book that the whole prison ends up loving and arguing about like it was freaking Game of Thrones or something. But if I was to devote too much time to these, I would be here all day. All the great humor we've come to know and love from Orange is still very much intact, and the show has even gotten nerdier in its 3rd season. The first episode alone had references to Harry Potter and Calvin and Hobbes, so you know I was plenty pleased. A bedbug outbreak also leads to no end of shenanigans, and some seeds are even planted for a Martha Stewart by way of Paula Deen character to join the cast next season. That joke is even funnier if you've read the book Orange is the New Black is based on, like myself, where in real life Piper Kerman makes numerous references to the real-world Martha Stewart. The show still has the ability to touch and warm hearts as it did before, Di and her family drama coming to mind in a big way. Characters are still just as complicated and layered as they ever were in Season 3, even minor ones like Caesar getting nice monologues. Orange is the New Black also got much more creative with its flashbacks this time around, in the first and last episode having multiple characters share the flashback portions of the show. As to better help illustrate the theme of that episode, in case you're wondering, it was motherhood and religion. And yet, despite all the stuff that still works and all the praise I'm laying on, I just could not help but feel that Orange is the New Black Season 3 was something of a holding pattern for the show. Lots of stuff happened, but it all gets sorted out kinda quick. In fact, two major characters depart the show under very suspicious circumstances that make me think the actors involved wanted more money. This would be a very common occurrence for shows that get as popular as quickly as this one does. Sadly, we won't know for sure until sometime later, no doubt. Season 3, in my mind, also suffered from the lack of a strong villain. Sure, the Faceless Corporation is bad and all, but the inmates have no way to fight back against them. In fact, the idea never once crosses their mind. I kept thinking the whole thing was going to lead up to some sort of hunger strike, but it never did. And while we get a happy, sunny ending for everyone, the truth is evil kinda won in this season. The corporation still controls Litchfield. In fact, they plan to grow it even bigger. Caputo sells out and ends up betraying his friends and employees. Chapman, to borrow a wrestling term, has turned full heel, and at least one character might be dead already. Now, that's not to say I didn't like Season 3. I tore through it in a couple of days and laughed uproariously throughout, but thinking back on it and being honest to myself as a critic, I can't help but feel it just fell a tad short of the high benchmark set by the first two seasons. If you've been a fan for this long, you'll probably like it, but, you know, if you're going in, maybe just adjust your expectations just a little bit.